UFOs, unidentified flying objects, are real.
I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that.
In 1988, aerospace designer Brad Sorenson attended the annual air show at Norton Air Force Base.
Let's talk about the secret air show in 1988.
Norton, yeah.
The event was an opportunity for aerospace companies and military contractors to showcase their latest technology to top military officials and government representatives.
It's a decommissioned Air Force Base, California, where there was the original ARV that we learned about.
Brad hoped to make some connections and maybe secure a new client. At some point, he got separated from his group and accidentally joined another. He found himself in a large hangar, watching a presentation led by a 3-star general. Initially, it seemed like a standard briefing on classified aircraft, so Brad assumed he was in the right place. But he wasn't. The general signaled, and a massive curtain was pulled back, revealing 3 aircraft no one expected to see.
And it was sort of a circular object, came up to it like a cupola. You see the drawings we have.
Later, fellow aerospace designer Mark McCandlish called Brad to ask how the air show had gone. Brad was quiet for a long time. Concerned, Mark pressed him, and Brad finally admitted, "I think I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." Mark, confused, reminded him they both had top-secret clearance. They had worked with major contractors like General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, Northrop, McDonnell Douglas, Boeing, and Rockwell International. They were accustomed to learning about cutting-edge experimental aircraft before anyone else. What could possibly be more classified than that? Brad explained that during the presentation, the curtain had revealed 3 flying saucers, silently hovering just a few feet above the ground. Mark asked Brad to describe what he saw. Brad said the saucers looked like something out of the 1950s. They had flat bottoms, sloped sides, and domes on top, with small bubbles on the domes that appeared to house cameras. The smallest saucer was about 24 feet wide. The medium one was 60 feet, and the largest was 120 feet across. The general presenting called them ARVs, short for Alien Reproduction Vehicles, but their nickname was flux liners. This name hinted at their technology, as flux refers to the measurement of an electric field through a surface. Next to the smallest saucer, a television displayed test flight footage. The video showed the craft hovering over a dry lake bed, performing strange maneuvers that looked like bouncing, and then shooting straight up at an incredible speed. The audience was shocked. No one had ever witnessed an aircraft move like that. Mark asked Brad if they explained how the saucers operated. Brad said the mechanics were surprisingly simple. Mark was stunned and asked, "Wait, you saw inside one of them?" Brad explained that the smallest saucer had panels removed, revealing its interior, and there was also an easel with detailed diagrams of its components. Brad saw the engine, the life support system, the crew compartment with jump seats, and the controls. Mark, being a designer and illustrator, asked Brad if he could recall enough details to help create a diagram. Brad said he remembered everything but refused to discuss it over the phone. Brad Sorenson and Mark McCandlish met for lunch the following day to discuss the Alien Reproduction Vehicles, ARVS, that Brad had seen at the air show. Mark wanted to create a sketch of what Brad had described. Both men worked in aerospace as designers and illustrators, so they were familiar with advanced technology and trained to notice details. Brad's first observation was that the ARVs appeared worn out. There were chips in the paint, fingerprints, and smudges on them. This suggested that the military had been using the technology for a long time. Brad then described the interior of the ARV and began sketching it. The dome on top was actually a half-sphere, with the crew's jump seats located inside the upper section. The flat base of the saucer housed a large capacitor array over a foot thick. Above this array were oxygen tanks for the crew to breathe and to maintain air pressure inside the craft. Then, Brad shared two shocking revelations from the three-star general at the air show. The ARV could travel faster than light, and it used zero-point energy. Zero-point energy deserves its own deep dive, but here's a quick explanation. It's the lowest possible energy level that a quantum mechanical system can reach. In classical mechanics, empty space is considered empty, but in quantum mechanics, no space is truly empty. Instead, there are fluctuating fields and particles that continuously appear and disappear, and this activity requires energy. This energy exists even in the vacuum of space. For example, liquid helium remains a liquid at absolute zero because zero-point energy keeps its atoms moving. But how much energy could really exist in a vacuum? Physicists John Wheeler and Richard Feynman calculated that the energy within the amount of space that fits in a coffee cup could boil away all the oceans on Earth. A coffee cup. If that happens, we can always refill the oceans with the tears of oil executives and their lobbyists. Using his design skills, Mark McCandlish turned Brad's rough sketch into a scaled technical blueprint of a functional flying saucer. Over the next few years, Mark refined his drawing as he spoke to other witnesses who provided additional details. Mark's curiosity about the ARV project grew, and he began conducting his own research. While Brad's account was just one report, Mark started finding more people who had seen, worked on, or even flown the ARV. In the early 1990s, Mark met Kent at an air show. Kent, a crew chief at Edwards Air Force Base, had been sent out to repair equipment one day. On his way to the job site, he passed a hangar with slightly open doors. Inside, he saw a flying saucer silently hovering. Without knowing about Brad's account, Kent described the ARV in the same way: a flat bottom, a domed roof, and smaller domes that housed cameras. But before he could process what he was seeing, Kent found himself at gunpoint. A voice ordered him to close his eyes and lie on the ground. A bag was placed over his head, and he was dragged to an interrogation room for an 18-hour debriefing. The aggressive military response didn't catch Mark off guard. What did surprise him was that this happened in 1973, almost 2 decades earlier. This raised a big question. How long had the military been keeping this technology under wraps? Here's what Mark said. It had a dome on top with small glass-like elements that looked like cameras were mounted beneath them. And I asked, "Really?" They said, "Yeah, no landing gears. It was just hovering." Mark continued, "I asked to borrow a pen and pulled out a Kodak lens cleaning tissue package from my camera bag. It was the only thing I had to draw on. I quickly sketched what my friend Brad Sorenson described back in 1988, the alien reproduction vehicle. I showed him and asked, 'Is this what you saw?' Until that moment, Mark hadn't been completely certain about the story's validity. This became his second point of confirmation. In addition to Kent Sellin, there was at least one more military insider who spoke on record about the ARV. At Norton Air Force Base, there was a restricted facility that even the wing commander wasn't privy to. Pilots often speculated that it housed a UFO. Conveniently, visitors could fly in, play golf as part of a tournament, and discreetly tour the facility to see the craft firsthand. The more Mark dug into the ARV flying saucer project, the more people he found who were aware of it. The story gained more credibility when he connected with Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens. Years ago, Colonel Stevens had piloted jets while chasing UFOs in the Arctic. Mark asked him, "Did you ever photograph anything resembling the craft I described?" To Mark's surprise, there were photos from 1967. The design had evolved slightly over the years, the most notable difference being that the domes on top were larger in older versions. Mark guessed this was because cameras used to be bulkier, and as technology improved, the domes got smaller. Today's ARVs likely have even tinier cameras or none at all. Mark noticed a consistent design among UFO sightings, despite the variety of shapes documented over the years. Most followed the same general structure: a round shape, flat bottom, angled edges, and an upper section. Some photos date back to the 1950s, suggesting these vehicles have been around for at least 75 years. However, they could be much older. Ancient Hindu and Sanskrit texts frequently reference vimanas, flying machines used by the gods. The Mahabharata, written over 3,000 years ago, recounts events from as far back as 5000 BC and mentions these crafts extensively. Vimanas were said to travel at high speeds, fly into space, and even navigate underwater. Fascinatingly, these ancient texts describe their engines in detail. The body of the Vimana must resemble a large nocturnal bird. Inside, a mercury engine should be placed with an iron heating device below it. Using Mercury's reactive force, which triggers buoyant motion, a man inside the Vimana can travel vast distances through the air. It can climb vertically, descend vertically, and move forward or backward. With these machines, humans can fly, and celestial beings can visit Earth. In other texts, Vimanas are described as using a mercury vortex engine. This detail raises intriguing questions. If mercury is contained in a cylinder and heated, will it circulate to create a vortex? Yes, it will. But what if, instead of heat, electricity was used? Similar to how the ARV operates. Applying a current to mercury can also cause circulation. It's compelling to think these ancient descriptions might align with modern technology. This technology gained significant attention in Germany during the 1930s, particularly with the concept of Die Glocke, or the bell. The bell stood approximately 12 feet tall and 9 feet wide, utilizing two high-speed counter-rotating cylinders filled with liquid mercury. The rotating mercury was believed to enable the bell to defy gravity. It is known that applying current to mercury causes it to rotate, and reversing the polarity makes it rotate in the opposite direction. By this stage in Mark's research, he was convinced that the ARV project was real and began piecing together its propulsion method. To fully uncover this mystery, Mark sought to interview people who claimed to have been inside UFOs, focusing his efforts on abductees. Mark spoke to several UFO abductees. While most recalled their encounters with aliens and the experiments they endured, they didn't remember details about the craft's engine, except for one. This individual described a circular craft with a central column containing rapidly rotating silver liquid. A wheel or mechanism on the column rotated in the opposite direction. Reports from UFO crash sites, like the Roswell incident, often describe similar technology in the wreckage. Additionally, dozens of patents for anti-gravity devices and vehicles powered by electricity emerged, particularly after Roswell in 1947. Many of these patents build upon the work of Nikola Tesla. Combining military contractor testimonies with abductee accounts, Mark deciphered the ARV's functionality. Its circular base operates as a massive Tesla coil, consisting of stacked metallic layers separated by small gaps, functioning as capacitors to store and redirect electricity. Using upwards of 1,000,000 volts, the craft generates a powerful electromagnetic field, and by manipulating this field, the pilot creates thrust. The craft's central column houses two counter-rotating cylinders filled with liquid mercury. The upper platform acts as an additional capacitor, working in tandem with the base to allow precise directional control. The pilot's control system is straightforward. A lever on the right adjusts the electricity output from the capacitors, while a trackball-like device on the left directs the power in any 360-degree direction. Oxygen tanks and the life support system are situated on the lower platform. The ARV lacks windows, relying instead on a synthetic vision system. Exterior cameras feed video directly to the pilot's left and right eyes, simulating three-dimensional vision much like a VR headset. In summary, the ARV generates, stores, and redirects immense amounts of energy, creating a field around the craft that enables it to move in any direction. But this doesn't fully explain how it might surpass the speed of light. Or does it? Recent papers from physicists suggest how a craft like the ARV could theoretically achieve faster than light travel. The limitation on light speed stems from the fact that an object's mass increases as it accelerates, approaching infinity at light speed. Zero-point energy, which exists everywhere, influences gravity, inertia, and mass. A craft that harnesses this energy from its surroundings could theoretically reduce gravity and decrease its mass. The faster the ARV travels, the more energy it absorbs, further lowering its mass. This operates like the inverse of E equals mc squared, but calculations suggest it doesn't violate physical laws. In September 2000, physicist Miguel Alcubierre published a paper titled The Warp Drive, where he explained how a vehicle could travel faster than light without breaking the laws of relativity. The concept involves compressing space-time directly in front of the vehicle while expanding it behind. This method would allow the ARV to travel vast distances in a very short time, such as reaching the edge of the solar system in just minutes. Alcubierre's paper also noted that the vehicle within the warp field would remain unaffected by changes in gravity. Regardless of how fast it accelerates or how sharp the turns are, the conditions inside the bubble would stay the same as when the journey started. This could explain how UFOs perform their sudden and extreme maneuvers. For example, an aircraft traveling at 7,000 miles per hour and making a sharp turn would subject a human body to forces that would be fatal, causing internal organs to crush under G-forces. But with a warp drive, none of this would be felt. You could accelerate at 100 G-forces and not even spill your drink. Pilots have reported that UFOs traveling at high speeds appear to do so without creating noise or exhaust. There are claims that these crafts generate energy seemingly out of thin air, and they might actually be doing just that. But how much of this is grounded in fact? Although there is eyewitness testimony about the ARV, also called the flux liner or the flying saucer, it remains just that, testimony. There are photos of saucers, but while most have been debunked as hoaxes, a few remain unexplained. When it comes to zero-point energy, the scientific community is divided. Some physicists support the idea, saying the math works, while others are skeptical and argue the math works without needing zero-point energy. Even if zero-point energy exists, and I think it does, we don't fully understand how the ARV would capture and use it. It's possible it could absorb energy through the craft's magnetic field, but that's just speculation. UFO sightings continue to capture global attention, with some events defying conventional explanations. In 2019, a passenger on a flight to Canada recorded an unusual image through the airplane window. The footage seemed to show two objects, or beings, merging into one elongated shape, sparking widespread speculation. Another sighting in Colombia left witnesses astonished when a bright light streaked across the sky, leaving a trail of energy. Unlike an asteroid or aircraft, its nature remains unexplained. Similarly, a triangular UFO appeared in Hawaii, moving silently through the sky. Witnesses observed blinking lights at its base and noted its incredible speed as it vanished into the clouds. One of the most notable sightings occurred in Montreal, Canada, in 2021. bright lights hovered over the city for several minutes, causing temporary disruptions at the airport. The event was visible from multiple locations and drew significant public attention. The Pentagon later confirmed the authenticity of footage, showing a pyramid-shaped UFO filmed by Navy personnel in 2019. Additionally, another recording from the U.S. displayed a UFO in daylight with remarkable clarity, addressing frequent complaints about poor quality footage. These events fuel ongoing debates about the nature and origins of these unidentified flying objects. So, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content.